Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 2 2024 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, what a sensational Week 1 I had overall. I felt very good with a lot of my predictions this week. I was very proud of how well I did. For the first time for the last couple years now, I have started out above 500 against the spread as well, and I definitely feel like for this week for me, with my against the spread picks, got a lot of bad beats. Let's just say that I had a few picks in there that I took the underdogs in, and such as the Colts Texans and the Broncos Seahawks, I missed the cover by half a point. Yeah, I missed the cover by half a point. I think it was Houston minus 2.5 and Denver plus 5.5. So I barely missed the cover by half a point. Those are two really bad beats, but I feel pretty good about making those predictions overall. I got two pushes with Arizona and and Miami covering the spread in both those regards. Thank you, DJ Dallas, for the 96-yard kickoff return touchdown. And then the other few picks, the worst pick I had, obviously, just probably like everybody else, New England and Cincinnati. If I would have told you there was a lock of the week, I would have probably told you it was that game right there. But I was dead wrong about that game from the jump. The Bengals just looked inept. Zach Taylor now 1-10 in the first 2 weeks of the year during his tenure. I don't know why the Bengals have these incredibly slow starts, but it's just awkward and frustrating. And I understand that the offensive line shot to you-know-what, and there were no receivers on the or besides Jamar Chase, there was no genuine receiver. Tanner Hudson fumbling the football out of the end zone yesterday was a big factor in why the Bengals lost, but that probably was the big loss there. And then, as everybody saw in my video last week, I took the Steelers initially to win, but then once I found out that Justin Fields was starting, I actually thought that the Falcons were going to win that game. Yeah, I didn't think Justin Fields was going to outplay Kirk Cousins. Justin Fields does not light the world on fire by any means, having 212 scrimmage yards and no touchdowns. Chris Boswell, by the way, MVP of the game outside of the defense, 6 field goals, franchise record for a regular season game. Reminded me of the 2016 divisional round when they played the Chiefs, and that was a tough one there. But that was a crazy outing there. And for the Falcons, it might be time for Penix. The Penix clock is starting to move in the direction, and Kirk's clock is moving closer to midnight by the game. And with how their starting schedule starts out, they might only get one win in their first 5 weeks. And if they're 1-4 with that $180 million quarterback, they're going to have some serious questions about the future of Kirk Cousins moving long term, even though he will be on the roster next year due to his $100 million in fully guaranteed money. Some of the other performances, the rookie quarterbacks did not look great. I thought out of the 3 that I saw, Jaden Daniels played the best. He was the only one that actually was also able to score a touchdown through the air. I know he also scored one through the ground as well, but I thought Jaden Daniels probably had the best performance. Bo Nix, the super senior that had 61 collegiate starts. Yeah, hey, Sean Payton, just wanted to point that out there. How's that old 24-year-old quarterback looking? Throwing, 1-yard line interceptions and another interception into double coverage. Though again, apparently from the press conference, everybody else sucked except your old rookie. Yeah, two-faced clown Sean Payton. What? You had that heat to rust. Why not you give that 24-year-old man, okay, even though he's a rookie, he's a 24-year-old man, tell him he was awful, tell him he can grow from it, but he sucked, okay? He was bad. Don't blame everybody else on that team besides him. Your defense balled out. Your defense got 2 safeties. Sorry, a little diatribe, but, all the rookie quarterbacks aside, they did not play well. Caleb got the win basically because Will Levis, the Mayo man, went moldy and completely self-destructed in the final 5 minutes of the game, or in the final second half of that game. Tony Pollard, though, did have a nice game, but I thought that was very telling. And the Tampa Bay Bucks and New Orleans Saints, the NFC South, the most pan division in football, even though the Panthers look like the worst team in football once again. After 1 week, I thought the Bucks and the Saints really put on outstanding performances on both sides of the ball that I think will carry over. I also thought Dallas put on a sensational performance as well that I think should be able to carry over as well. But like I said before last week, these videos are going to be a little bit shorter, but let me get right into my picks. But I also do want to say next week, we will have a longer video next week, and the video will be coming out Tuesday instead of Monday. I just wanted to put that out there for my viewers, that next Monday there will not be a video coming out, but there will be a video coming out Tuesday instead. And Tuesday's video will be a longer form video. So I just wanted to put that heads up. But overall for the week so far, against the spread and straight up, against the spread so far through 15 games, I am 7-6-2 with 2 pushes being Arizona and Miami. And straight up, I have had probably my best opening week in a very long time, maybe even ever, doing these videos. I am 13-2 straight up right now. That equals 53.3% against the spread. Straight up, that equals 87% straight up. And again, since it's the first week, those are my overall records for the season so far. So we're in a very good spot to start the year. I am thrilled with how my year is starting, especially with my straight up predictions. Almost getting, and I should have stuck my Pittsburgh being possibly 14-1 through a 16-game week. That's a hard feat to accomplish. Could have been undefeated if the Bengals didn't choke, but, you can't have everything, apparently. But let me get right into my picks for this week. So, this Thursday, when the 1-0 Buffalo Bills travel to Miami to take on the 1-0 Miami Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins are 1.5-point favorites in this game. In a very slight upset here, I'm going to go with Buffalo here, plus 1.5, and Buffalo straight up. And then on Sunday, when the 1-0 New Orleans Saints travel to Dallas to take on the 1-0 Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Dallas here straight up, but I'm going to take New Orleans plus 6.5. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to Detroit to take on, for the Detroit Lions, the year's second playoff rematch in as many weeks in the divisional round. The Detroit Lions are 6.5-point favorites in this game, just like the previous game. Give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here plus 6.5, but I'm going to take the Detroit Lions straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts travel to Green Bay to take on the 0-1 Green Bay Packers at Lambeau, the Indianapolis Colts are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Indianapolis here minus 3, and Indianapolis straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 or 0-1 New York Jets travel to Tennessee to take on the 0-1 Tennessee Titans, the New York Jets are 4-point favorites in this game, giving the New York Jets here minus 4, and the New York Jets straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 or the 0-1 or 1-0 San Francisco 49ers travel to Minnesota to take on the 1-0 Minnesota Vikings, the San Francisco 49ers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Give me San Francisco here minus 5.5, and San Francisco straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Seattle Seahawks travel to New England to take on the surprising 1-0 New England Patriots, the Seattle Seahawks are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Seattle here minus 3, and Seattle straight up. The next game, in the battle of the NFC East cellar dwellers, when the 0-1 New York Giants travel to Washington to take on the 0-1 Washington Commanders, the Washington Commanders are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Washington here minus 2.5, and Washington straight up. The next game, when the 1-0 Los Angeles Chargers travel to Carolina to take on the 0-1 Carolina Panthers, the Los Angeles Chargers are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Giving the Los Angeles Chargers here minus 4.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Cleveland Browns travel to Jacksonville to take on the 0-1 Jacksonville Jaguars, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Jacksonville Jaguars here minus 3, and the Jacksonville Jaguars straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Las Vegas Raiders travel to Baltimore to take on the Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens are 8.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Baltimore here minus 8.5, and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Los Angeles Rams travel to Arizona to take on the 0-1 Arizona Cardinals, in probably my weakest hedge, and if anybody wants to criticize me for taking this hedge, I fully understand. In my weakest hedge of the week, I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams here straight up, but I'm going to take the Arizona Cardinals plus 2.5. I'll explain that very quickly here in a second. The next game, when the 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Denver to take on the 0-1 Denver Broncos in the Sean Payton revenge game for Russ. I hope Russ starts and he kicks the tar out of Sean Payton. But let my personal frustrations subside. But regardless, objectively in the game, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Pittsburgh here minus 2.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-1 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Kansas City to take on the 1-0 Kansas City Chiefs, The Kansas City Chiefs are 6-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here, -6. And Kansas City straight up. Then in the Sunday night game, in a battle of number 1 versus number 2 overall picks, when the 1-0 Chicago Bears travel to Houston to take on the 1-0 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Houston Texans here, -6.5, and Houston straight up. And then in the traditional Week 2 Kirk Cousins primetime game trip to Philadelphia, when the 0-1 Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins travel back to Philadelphia in Week 2 to take on the 1-0 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 6.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles here, -6.5, and Philadelphia straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. This is a game to where I thought the Buffalo Bills through the first half, the Arizona Cardinals were just having their way, going up and down the offensive field. Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, James Conner, they all were fundamentally at will, going up and down the field. And I thought Josh Allen in the offense, it sputtered. It didn't look sharp. Didn't look crisp. Allen kind of he missed some of his big targets. Shakur probably ended up being the number 1 receiver. Kincaid looked quiet. But in that second half, the Bills defense did its job and shut out the Arizona Cardinals offensively. I know they scored because of DJ Dallas, but they did their job that way. I thought Tyler Bass had an effective game. And I just think with Josh Allen and the Bills, he proved at least for the first test that he is that guy. That he can basically, all the offensive weapons that are gone are misplaced, you can put him with some average weapons, and he can carry you to a victory over a Cardinal team that offensively was very spry and very competitive. Defensively, they have a lot of problems they need to worry about from what I saw. But I was impressed with the Bills' effort. And in the Miami Dolphins, it was very much the opposite to where through the first half, the Miami Dolphins just kind of sleptwalked through the game. There was a lot of penalties, missed throws. The offensive line got shot to you-know-what. The Jags were getting insistent pressure. And essentially, it was Sanders had missed a kick in the middle. And essentially, the turning point of the game, if anybody watched the game, essentially, Travis Etienne is going into the end zone. They're about to go up 17 and probably win the game, but he fumbles the football at that point. And the next play, Tua throws a big play, big strike to Tyreek Hill, 80 yards. It's a 3-point game. The Jags at that point have Trevor Lawrence throws it one final time on 3 possessions. Doug Peterson makes a boneheaded decision to go for it on a 4-from-1 on his own 32. And the Dolphins end up winning at the gun due to Sanders' 52-yard field goal, which is impressive for him because he doesn't make them that often. But after looking at that overall performance, I am, let's just say, confident in the Bills to grind out a win because I didn't think the Dolphins... I think also with that offensive line, I think the Bills' defense should be able to get a decent amount of pass rush. And also just in Josh Allen's career, the man has been an absolute beast against the Miami Dolphins. He is 10-2 all time against the Dolphins, completing 66.4% of his passes with 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. And again, could the Dolphins win this game? Sure. I think the Dolphins have some more talent, and they're at home, so they're going to be a little bit more rested. And Jalen Ramsey did make some big plays. And the Bills are not the same team than they were last year. But just looking at both teams, looking at how the situations are, I think the Bills kind of grind out another win that I might have to give the Bills credit. They might be able to make the playoffs with Josh Allen, which is something that I don't think anybody thought in the beginning of the year initially. So, but that's why I like Buffalo here, +1.5 and Buffalo straight up. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the New Orleans Saints. I was incredibly impressed with the Saints' performance. They scored 30 points in the first half. Derek Carr was 19 of 23, 200 yards, played efficient. Kamara had 90 yards. The defense held the Panthers to about 180 yards for the entire game. And it was just an incredibly impressive performance. And Gary Kubiak's son, Clint, who is now the offensive coordinator for the Saints, has done a masterful job. And I think the Saints will play a bit better. However, if you watch the Dallas Cowboys, and I did for a majority of that game, the Dallas Cowboys absolutely obliterated the Cleveland Browns from pillar to post. Dak had an efficient game, And Dak fortunately won the game because now since he is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, that is a massive problem. But when I look at what the Cowboys did, that defense was just stifling. 6 sacks, held the Browns to under 13 yards every drive for the first 3 quarters. CeeDee Lamb in a very efficient game. Zeke scored. And I just have to look at the Saints and go, I think they're a solid team, and they are better than I thought. But honestly, I think that was just how bad the Panthers are. No offense to Saints fans. Any Saints fans that want to come at me and say, this Saints team can win the division, maybe you can. Maybe. So, but I think Dallas is going to be a much more well-rounded team, a better quarterback. They're on a confident high right now after beating a Brown team that it was a 50-50 game at best, which was surprising to me because I always thought the Cowboys were better than the Browns from the jump. But I'm going to take the Cowboys here because, again, also the Cowboys have not lost to New Orleans in Dallas in about 12 years. I know they only played a few times, but I really like what this Cowboys team showed in the first week. And if you're going to tell me Derek Carr is going to repeat that performance against the Cowboys defense, good luck with that. It should be a great game. And like I said, I'm going to give the Saints their credit. The plus 6.5 is saying, I saw enough out of your performance that I think you can hang with the Cowboys. But at the end of the day, I think the Cowboys are the better team in that regard. So that's why I like Dallas here straight up. The New Orleans Saints plus 6.5. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a game to where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, everybody that watched that game, sensational. That was probably, that's the Bucs team I believed in to win the NFC South. Baker, 4 touchdowns. Rashad White and Bucky Irving ran incredibly well. The defense was stifling for the most part for that rookie. Basically I thought Jaden Daniels' best asset was his legs. His arm throwing, he made a couple nice throws, but it was essentially his legs which were the biggest part. And I thought Tampa put up a tremendous effort. Detroit, watching Detroit, it gave me a little bit pause to cause because they did have a 20-3 lead. Their defense was out like gangbusters in the first half, but by the end, in the second half, you honestly could make the point if you're a Rams fan in context. If Puka Nacua would have stayed healthy, you probably could have won that game. Or just as the old adage, which I always hate about NFL overtime, it should be like college, that the Rams never got the ball and Stafford couldn't respond. Though kudos to the Lions offensive line and Dave Montgomery for driving the ball down the field with the run game, just pounding to the Rams defense for the win. And I do want to shout out Jamison Williams. He had a sensational game. He was the best receiver on the field last night for Detroit. 5 receptions, $115 and a massive touchdown. And I think he will become the Lions' second best pure receiver, which I think will be a huge asset for the Lions to let Amon-Ra get more comfort and, more opportunities to play. And, in this game, even though the Carlton Davis injury is kind of looming, the Bucs had a couple injuries themselves. I'm going to take the Lions here because I just trust the Lions to grind and grit out another win. I think this Lions defense, should be able to play pretty well. And I just trust the Lions and I just don't know if Tampa can match it in this spot. Again, I saw enough from Tampa that just like with New Orleans, I'm going to take the Bucs with the 6.5 because I think Tampa just basically had a complete game on all sides of the ball. But at the end of the day, I think the Lions just have a little bit more talent, and I just trust Dan Campbell and his staff to out-scheme Todd Bowles by just a little bit. So that's why I like Detroit here to win straight up at Tampa Bay plus 6.5. The next game, the Indianapolis Colts over the Green Bay Packers. This one is fairly easy to me. The Green Bay Packers in Brazil looked pretty good. Josh Jacobs had 84 yards. Jalen Reed had 130-plus yards from scrimmage, including that big jet sweep 33-yard touchdown. I thought Romeo Doubs played okay. The tight ends were non-existent, and Jordan Love had his moments. But the biggest moment that the Packers had was due to Jalen Carter arguably having a dirty play. I do feel bad that Jalen Carter was getting a bunch of death threats. That should never happen in terms of a play because that was not an intentional, Bush League play, in my opinion. But now Jordan Love has an MCL sprain, and the quarterback that couldn't even be a UFL quarterback, Malik Willis, is in line to start. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is enough to me to give the Colts the victory. Because if you watch the Colts-Texans game, you saw a quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and I will make this take now. He will be the equivalent to Brock Purdy of the 2023 class, it looks like. It looks like every quarterback that was taken in the 23 class so far looks like poop sauce. looks like grade A garbage. And who is the one lone bearer of the 22 class that's still standing? Mr. Brock Purdy. And who will look like the number one guy that's going to stand out for the 23 class? Mr. Anthony Richardson. He put up a lot of tremendous flashes. I have some problems with the accuracy to basically say that, he can hit, basically it felt like he was a home run quarterback. He could throw the deep ball beautifully, and that throw to Alec Pierce, wow, what a play. But everything else in between, could he, if he's not hitting homers, he can't hit 15-yard slants or comebacks or curls. It didn't seem like he could hit anything in the middle or short. And that is the one thing I have concern. But when you're playing a quarterback in Malik Willis, who I don't even think deserves to be in the NFL, and the only reason why the Packers are starting him because Sean Clifford, the bum of a Penn State quarterback, was the other option. This should be an easy win for the Colts. You kind of saw it too when Malik Willis came out there. That essentially they threw a screen and then he ran around, looked like a dummy, and got sacked to end the game against the Packers on Friday. So again, could the Packers? I actually would have taken the Packers to win if the Colts, if Jordan Love would have been healthy. But it would be Anthony Richardson versus Malik Willis. Malik Willis is like 4th career start against Richardson's like 6th. I think Richardson gets this victory, and the Colts, get to 1-1 and have some confidence in a very intriguing game against Chicago in 2 weeks. So that's like Indianapolis here, -3, and Indianapolis straight up. The next game, the New York Jets over the Tennessee Titans. This is one to where I haven't seen the Jets play, but I know what the Jets have as a roster, and I saw what the Bears did. The only positive thing I saw to the Tennessee Titans was Tony Pollard, and Will Levis apparently threw for more yards than Caleb Williams. I love the Titans defense for the most part. Did an effective job. The Titans defense played well. But the Mayo Man went moldy and completely disintegrated by having the 3 incredibly stupid turnovers, including the pick 6 to Tyreek Stevenson, which was just an egregious error. And no matter what the Jets do, I just trust Aaron Rodgers and that offense and that team just in general will just look better and play better against a Titans team that objectively with Will Levis, I don't know if they're going to be able to move the ball effectively enough. And I just trust Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers could have played off his one Achilles, and I would have had more faith in that than what I saw from against this Titans team that I saw yesterday. So, again, do the Titans, did they show a little bit of promise? Sure. I think defensively they did a pretty good job. Nick Folk in another, nice solid field goal. I think he has one of the longest 40 or inside 40 streaks in the NFL. But give me the Jets here, just the better team, and Aaron Rodgers will just be able to make more plays against this Titans defense. And I see Will Levis having another incredibly rough and grueling day against the New York Jets defense. So give me the New York Jets here -4 and the New York Jets straight up. The next game, the San Francisco 49ers over the Minnesota Vikings. This is one to where the Minnesota Vikings actually played a very underrated game, and Sam Darnold was one of the better quarterbacks yesterday. He actually played a very good game against the Giants defense, which had some talent on it, and they put up 28 points. They held the Vikings to 6. Andrew Van Ginkel had a tremendous pick 6 from Daniel Jones. And I think the Vikings overall, even though, again, the Jordan Addison injury is big, because now if you don't have Addison and Hawkinson in the game against the Niners, I feel like that's going to be game over. Because essentially, I would just double Jefferson and make Sam Darnold try to throw it to somebody else. I guess the only advantage that the Vikings have is that Sam Darnold was on the 49ers last year, so he definitely knows how Kyle Shanahan wants to, operate a system. But I'm going to take the 49ers here just because the Giants were just a really bad team. The Niners are a very good team. I think the Vikings, I'll put it this way. The Vikings, with how bad the NFC North looked yesterday, or how the NFC is just shaping up in general, the Vikings may actually, and shout out to Gio Knows, I put the Vikings on my wall over there where you really can't see it where my camera's positioned. The Vikings might hang around a little bit longer than I thought, especially with the state of the division, because you can make an argument today, through at least 1 week, that the Minnesota Vikings have the second best quarterback in the NFC North going into week 2. Again, depending on what happens to the Niners, if Purdy, everybody just gets in the infirmary ward in San Francisco, could I change my mind and take Minnesota? Sure, I could. But I think the Niners should be able to stay unscathed and mostly healthy And I think this Niners team should be able to assert their, dominance against a Minnesota team that looks better on, look better on film and gameplay than I thought. But I still think the Niners are the better team. So that's like San Francisco here, -5.5. It's San Francisco straight up. The next game, Seattle over New England. Seattle Seahawks over New England Patriots. This is a game to where the New England Patriots defense and Gerard Mayo, incredibly impressive. Dominant defense. Stifling defense. I know the Bengals didn't have a lot of weapons, but the fact that they held Joe Burrow only 174 yards passing and looked that inept, looked that weak, I would be incredibly thrilled if I was a Patriot fan, knowing that if you get some more offensive weapons, you at least know that you're going to have a very coached, very consistent, and very motivated team and a sensational defense. And I definitely think the Patriots will be in, more games, and they will hang around and be more competitive than I initially thought going into the year. With Seattle, I thought Seattle, it looked really bad through the beginning, especially when Geno Smith threw that interception right to Alex Singleton out of nowhere. But I think with Seattle here, I think Seattle has the better weapons. I do think that Patriot defense will give Geno some problems, and, he knows about the New England, type of play and environment due to his time with the Jets early on in his career. But in this game, where both teams kind of seem similar, I think the Seahawks have more receiving talent. I do think the Broncos could, the Patriots could run on the Seahawks defense, which would be key, but I just think Geno or Jacoby at this point, in games where you could say equally effective or equally, I'll take Geno to make a few more plays than Jacoby can. And I just think the Seahawks, they just have more talent and just looked more polished and prepared compared to the Bengals. And I feel like that will show itself on Sunday in this game in Foxborough. Should be an interesting game. And if the Patriots win that game, we're gonna start looking at the Patriots going like they could get a 500 record out of this. I don't think they're gonna be a playoff team by any means or anything like that. But I think if they're 2-0, you might think, okay, they could actually go 500. Gerard Mayo could actually genuinely have a successful season with the Pats, which would be a shock for me that he could still keep his mulligan. But I think that conversation, if they somehow beat the Seahawks next week, has to be had in a way. So that's why I like Seattle here -3 and Seattle straight up. The next game, the Washington Commanders over the New York Giants. This is easy for me. The Washington Commanders were able to score a offensive touchdown. And the New York Giants were not. And I trust Jaden Daniels to throw the ball better. Jaden Daniels is more dynamic. Jaden Daniels has more talent around him. Jaden Daniels looked more competent and effective. Cade York missing the field goal, that was tough. And maybe they should have kept Joey Sly, who hit essentially the game-winning field goal against the Bengals. But that's kind of essentially this game. Could the Giants win this game? Sure. Could the Giants defense outplay the Commanders defense? And could the Giants defense confuse Jaden Daniels more than it could confuse Daniel Jones? Absolutely. But from what I saw in week 1, I think Jaden Daniels in that offense should be able to make a few more plays, and Jaden Daniels just being more dynamic than Daniel Jones and just having some more talent than Daniel Jones should be able to pull off the win in this game. Because the Commanders' defense definitely did get, at times, a decent amount of pressure on Baker Mayfield, including Cleveland Farrell, who got his first sack with the Commanders. Nice for him. I just think in this game, also, it's a home game for the Commanders. I'll take the home field advantage as well. It's going to be an ugly game. Both these teams don't look very optimistic in where they're going to go moving forward. But I will take the Commanders here based on the fact that the Commanders were actually able to score a touchdown. And I did not see the New York Giants do that. I think the Giants will score a touchdown in this game, but they will not win it based off of that. So that's why I like the Washington Commanders here. -2.5 and the Washington Commanders straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Carolina Panthers. The Chargers were a competent football team. The Chargers ran for over 100 yards. J.K. Dobbins had one of his best games as a professional. They ran the air out of the football. Herbert looked effective. Ladd McConkey had a few nice scores. And he looks like he'll become the number one receiver for the Chargers. The defense was solid. Big fourth down stops. And they're playing a Panther team that just got embarrassed by the Saints. And I think the Chargers are a better team than the Saints. Even though they have to go to Carolina, after what I saw out of Carolina, Carolina's going to be in the kind of the giant territory to where I'm probably going to pick against them after that performance basically every week of the year. And until they prove me wrong, I just have no confidence in that team that they're going to be able to win a game. They will probably get a win. I think Dave is a good enough coach. But just after that performance, Also, just one key other thing. The Bryce Young bust statue, in terms of the bad way. Not the Bryce Young bust in terms of an honor, but the bust, the 4-letter word no athlete wants to hear. He's already got the B carved out after yesterday. Because he looked worse than he did his rookie year, and partially the U started to come out. If he puts up another, again, that U is going to be formed here by about week 5 or 6. And then we're going to start working on the S here. It's kind of like, it's basically football hangman. And he's already got the B already carved out, and initially, that's firmly locked. The U is starting to poke out itself here. By about week 4 or 5, he could have about half the U in. By week 10, it could be the full U. He could be a BU and just have 2 letters to bust. But I just think, again, this Chargers team, better coach, more talented, more consistent, and I just have no faith in the Panthers after what I saw to pick them in this game. That's like the Los Angeles Chargers here, -4.5, and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Cleveland Browns. I'm taking the Jaguars here based on the fact that the Cleveland Browns sucked. The Cleveland Browns, with all that talent, with all that money they put in, even though I know the offensive line, they didn't have their left tackle or their right tackle, just was inept. They were sad, and I thought that the Cleveland Browns just basically threw up and gave a horrific middle finger to the dog pound. Deshaun Watson is not good anymore. That is the worst contract the NFL has ever provided, the team has ever provided, and the Browns will not win a championship, I have confidence to say, for the next 15 years. Because the repercussions from that contract, I know it's only for a couple years, and I'm exaggerating, I know. But that's the kind of management, that's the kind of behavior that they accept, and there is no way out of this for at least the immediate future. For the next 2 years at least, for the next 3 years, they're not going anywhere. And I think once they make the decision to go to Jameis Winston, which I think, as the weeks go on, if they keep playing that badly, you're going to have to make that decision sooner or later. I think that will go down as the worst contract, and they're going to still have to pay Deshaun Watson $92 million fully guaranteed, regardless of what happens, and he's just going to have to sit there. He's just going to have to sit on that roster and just take up a spot and be the most overpaid, overhyped, and overrated quarterback in the league for his contract. And the Browns, who've done a lot of Browns decisions, that will probably go down in the history of the franchise as the worst one they've ever made. And with Jacksonville, look, Jacksonville, William Mid Lawrence showed once again that he's mid. He had one nice throw to Brian Thomas. I mentioned earlier the ETN fumble was big. But the Jags defense, though, kudos to that new defensive coordinator. Did a great job. Held that team basically in through a majority of the game. I really thought it was the offense that let them down at the end that made them blow a 10-point lead with ETN's fumble and just Trevor not willing to throw the football. But after you watch what the Browns did, and I don't know, I know one of the offensive linemen's not back yet. I think he's on the IR. If that Browns offensive line does not have their guys back, I think the Jags defense, if that's pressure they got onto Tua in the battle of former Clemson quarterbacks, they could do the same thing to Deshaun. And I just saw Trevor Lawrence look competent, and he looked average, or he looked managery. I mean, that's a little more offensive. He looked more game managery. He only threw for 120 yards, but he played better than Deshaun Watson did. And to me, that was that's easy enough to give the Jags the win. So that's why I like Jacksonville at -3 and Jacksonville straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the Las Vegas Raiders. The Ravens are mad. We played the defending champs to a T. We basically paid Derrick Henry to sit there for a majority of the game, $60 million not to do anything. Isaiah Likely was tremendous. He is now our new number 1 tight end, and Mark Andrews is going to kind of go into a secondary role. And I think we will keep Andrews for the rest of his contract, but we will not retain him after his contract ends, and that likely will become our new number 1 tight end. Lamar was sensational. That was the best game he had played against the Chiefs in terms of his statistical output, even though he did have the one fumble, and he couldn't hit a deep ball to save his life. And he should have been able to end the game with Zay Flowers in the back of the end zone. But the Baltimore Ravens are playing a team in the Raiders that looked like the Raiders. Gardner Minshew had some nice throws, and the defense definitely had moments in the beginning, but eventually the talent of the other team's offense, with Justin Herbert leading it, was able just to overwhelm the Raiders, and the Raiders' offense just did not look like it had an answer, even with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. They just looked inept, they looked overwhelmed, and I think with that Ravens defense, as mad as it is, we're going to take our aggression out on the Raiders, and the Ravens get a nice, easy coasting victory before a kind of medium game against the Cowboys coming up in 2 weeks. Could the Raiders be competitive? Sure. Our offensive line looked inept, and if Max Crosby wrecks the game, we could be in a game that goes until the fourth quarter. But after what I know from what I saw from the Ravens on Thursday, they're mad. They're going to be stewing for about 10 days, and they want to have an opportunity to take some anger and some steam and show that we are still one of the best teams in the NFL. And I think we'll do that against a very mediocre and uninspiring Raider team that will likely end up finishing at least third, maybe last in the AFC West. So that's like Baltimore here minus 8.5 and Baltimore straight up. The next game, the Los Angeles Rams over the Arizona Cardinals. This is a game to where both defenses were okay. I think the problem for me is the Rams' offensive line is bad, and so I think the Arizona Cardinals can generate a significant amount of pass rush, which are going to limit Stafford. And Puka Nacua left the game in the first half with a knee injury, and I just don't know what his condition of his health is going to be. And I am going to trust in this game to where I think it's going to be a shootout. I will trust Sean McVay and the offensive staff to outshoot the Cardinals staff in this game. It's going to be a interesting game. I think the Rams are under more pressure because of essentially they made a furious comeback, and I was ticked off because I had the Rams plus 3.5, and we got to overtime. I almost thought I was going to have the perfect play to where the Lions were going to get the game-winning field goal, and then the Rams were going to get stopped, and then I could have got the double win there. But no, the Lions had to actually score in the end zone, which sucked because that gave the Lions that 3.5 cover. That's brutal. So again, my 7-6-2 record, but the bad beats I got, I'm actually not that angry about that. Honestly, I'm not. Because I felt like I had about 3 games there that by about half a point I could have easily gone 10-4-2 with just a few different things that happened. But that's the breaks of betting. So but in this game I'm going to take the Rams here because I trust the Rams offense even without Puka if he can't play, especially with how Tyler Johnson could become the next underrated weapon for the Rams to play. I think the Rams in a shootout with the Cardinals. I'll trust McVay and Stafford in this game over Kyler and the Cardinals offense. And also for the Cardinals sense, I just want to point this out there. As someone that has Marvin Harrison Jr. in a fantasy league, please let the man grab the ball. There was one play where Marvin Harrison is literally running free down the field, and that could have been a game-changing touchdown, and Kyler couldn't see him, and it was just maddening to me, maybe from a personal level, but it's like, use your best weapon more. Trey McBride's very good, and he's probably your second best weapon. But your best skill position player is that receiver right there. And you need to use him more to be a little more effective. You could say I'm being a little bit biased because of my fantasy takes, but sure, I will fully accept that. But yeah, I have the Rams in this one winning a shootout. So that's like the LA Rams here straight up, but I will take the Arizona Cardinals plus 2.5. If you want to judge me because I'm taking a 2.5 point hedge, fine, but I just think both teams had problems, and I at least want to be half right regardless of what happens. So, the next game, the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, Bo Nix is going to play the Pittsburgh defense. I know the Broncos put a ton of money into that offensive line. I just know that if they made Kirk Cousins look as bad and inept as he did, if he made the Falcons' offense look as weak, just imagine what they're going to do for a kid in his second career game. Again, the offense for Pittsburgh, it looked the same. Basically, for the last 3 years, it is brutal to watch the Pittsburgh offense as a Steeler fan. The defense, it's sensational. It's the best defense, if not, it's one of the best, if not the best defense in the entire NFL. But watching the Pittsburgh offense, it grinds teeth. It takes a lot to watch. It's not pretty. It's ugly. But I am going to take the Pittsburgh Steelers here because if they can grind out a win against the Falcons offense with the weapons they have, they definitely can do it against the Denver offense, which has lesser weapons, and Bo Nix as a rookie quarterback. Mike Tomlin has feasted on rookie quarterbacks throughout his career, and if Fields or Russ plays, regardless, I'm not going to do what I did last week in this game. I feel very confident either way that if it's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson starting this game, the Pittsburgh Steelers should be able to go into Denver and get a victory to go to 2-0. And just like last year, who would have thought? The number one team in the AFC North through a week, it's not the Ravens, it's not the Browns, it's not the Bengals, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin. So, That's all like Pittsburgh here, -2.5. Pittsburgh straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Cincinnati Bengals. The Chiefs look like the defending champs. The offense looks solid. Worthy looked great. They're going to get Hollywood Brown back. And I just think, for me, the Bengals, too many injuries on the offensive line. You don't know about the receiving core. They look weak. They look inept. And I think there could still be rust. Again, it's the first couple weeks. Taylor doesn't win these kind of games very often. And I think the Chiefs, if they get Hollywood Brown back, they were kind of more in, mid-season form. I also think with Isaiah Pacheco and Carson Steele could have a very big game. If the Patriots could run for over $160 with Ramondre Stevenson, I definitely think Pacheco and Carson Steele should be able to run effectively against the Bengals defense as well. I think, Mahomes looks polished, comfortable. You don't know about T. Higgins and just everybody else in the Bengals receiving core outside of Mike Gesicki, who made a decent play. Really couldn't do anything, and I don't think Zach Moss is not Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow is not Lamar Jackson, the athlete. So I definitely think that, the running game for the Bengals, that gets stifled, they should be able to hold on. And I just think the Chiefs, for the first time in the Mahomes era in the regular season, I believe Patrick Mahomes will finally beat Joe Burrow in a regular season game. I have that much confidence in it. And again, could the Bengals, turn a switch? They could. But I'm going to take I'm going to take Kansas City here based on the fact I think the Chiefs, they're going to get another week under their belt, more reps, a little bit more rust. I think Patrick plays a better game, and I just think the Bengals, with their injuries on the offensive line and the receiving core, I just think they look a little bit more rusty. And, the concerns about the Bengals going into, week 3 are going to be more genuine just based on where this team is right now. So that's why Kansas City are -6 and Kansas City straight up. Then the final 2 games, the Houston Texans over the Chicago Bears. I'm taking Houston here -6.5. Houston just played a very overall, clearly effective game. C.J. Stroud was solid. Nico Collins, 3 straight games of 100-plus yards. The Texans' defense definitely had some things to be desired, just because Anthony Richardson was just throwing long shot after long shot after long shot. But thankfully, this is Caleb Williams, who, in his first game, with all the hype, including myself, he didn't look great. It looked meh. It looked awkward. And I'm gonna take. Do I think he actually puts an offensive touchdown on the board? Yes, I do. But it definitely was not the prettiest of ways for that debut to happen. And I just think the Texans, they'll look better. They'll look more solid. I think the Bears defense can cause some problems with the Texans offensive line. But if you're telling me with what you saw out of week 1, I think the Texans have an 80% chance to win this game. I do not think the Bears, from what I saw, from the play calling, from the offensive line, from how Caleb looked erratic as he was, I think the Texans pull out this victory in a 10 to 14 point margin. I think it's a comfortable win for the Texans. It's comfortable. It's not going to be a blowout. With the Bears are going to have a couple moments, but I think the Texans get a comfortable win with that defensive line, with that secondary, and with Caleb Williams just still trying to learn. It definitely was not as pretty or as polished as I thought it was, and everybody's thought about what the Bears quarterback could be. Depending on what happens in the first couple weeks, we definitely having some more questions about maybe, okay, is Caleb the guy, or did we incredibly way overhype this kid, to start out? Because with all that talent, he shouldn't have thrown less yards than Will Levis, but he did. Will Levis' self-destruction basically cost them that game. If he didn't have those turnovers, I think the Titans actually probably would have won that game. So that's like Houston here, -6.5, and Houston straight up. And lastly, the annual Philadelphia Eagles over the Atlanta Falcons. The annual Kirk Cousins trip to Philadelphia in week 2. 3 straight years now this has happened on a primetime game. I'm taking Philadelphia here. Saquon was sensational. The offense was very good. I'm kind of still a little bit irritated. Basically, it's a 4-headed monster with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, and Devontae Smith. Nobody else in the Eagles offense, the positions will do anything or will really matter. So Dallas Goedert is the most overrated fourth option, fourth option in the league. I think he's a decent tight end. But I think with the Eagles, the only problem if you're the Eagles, is it's just the turnovers. I think the turnovers from the center, the 2 botched snaps from Cam Jurgens, he's definitely not Kelsey. But I will take the Eagles to win this game based on the fact that what you saw out of the Falcons is, again, can the Eagles generate a pass rush like the Pittsburgh Steelers? No. But do I think the Falcons offensively are going to be able to move the ball against the Eagles secondary? Not really. I think, the Packers had some better weapons. And, I think Bijan might be having a more effective game, which would be a positive. But at the end of the day, in a big primetime spot, Kirk Cousins has only won one Monday Night Football game in his entire career. He is known for choking in these big moments. He's choked in both of the moments the last 2 years in Philadelphia, for crying out loud. So, in this game, it's going to be, an awkward game. Do I think the Falcons will look better than they did yesterday? Sure, I think they will. But will they beat this Philadelphia Eagle team offensively? I do not. I think this Eagles offense, you have a much more dynamic offense, a better play caller in Kellen Moore. And I just think, again, when the rubber meets the road, Kirk Cousins, just like he did yesterday, will show in the big moment he will collapse again, and the Michael Penix clock will continue to accelerate because Falcon fans are going to be mad that we bought a $180 million quarterback that doesn't look that much different than the Desmond Ridder quarterback that we had before. He's a better quarterback than Desmond Ridder, but with the Falcons offense, it basically looks the same. So that's why Philadelphia here -6.5 and Philadelphia straight up. So those are my thoughts and comments for this. Those are my picks, thoughts, and comments for this week. So my video actually ended up being about 46 minutes. So it's not. So I shaved off 13 minutes. So I guess I did a better job, and I was able to give more condensed predictions than I usually do. But I just wanted to let everybody know that next week the video will come out Tuesday, and it should be more about the hour length because I'll have more time. But that is it. So best of luck to all players, coaches, fellow prognosticators, fellow fantasy players. And until next week, week 3, this is Matt, the Fanatic, signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.